Thank you all for being here. My name is Eleazar Melendez, Eleazar. Melendez is Melendez. I'm a spokesperson for Floridians for Honest Lending. We're a nonprofit advocacy group that is bringing attention to the ongoing foreclosure crisis that we have here in the state of Florida. That's a result of obviously the national economy, but also fraudulent activities by the financial institutions that have continued unabated for the past 10 years. We're here, and you're here for a specific case, and that's the case of Ana Lazara Rodriguez, who is someone that has been fighting for freedom and justice her entire life, and now is being denied that freedom and justice as a financial institution, and the owner that bought her property through a financial institution seek to foreclose on her and seek to put her on the street in the middle of a pandemic. We're going to talk about that, but I also want to highlight that Ana Lazara's case is just one of hundreds and thousands that we're facing in the state of Florida right now. We see a system that is tilted towards the financial institutions being able to commit fraud and not being held to account, and that's unacceptable. We saw that 10 years ago, and the way that we resolved that 10 years ago was just by rolling over the homeowners and letting the financial institutions get with whatever they wanted, and that cannot happen again. That is what we're here for. That is what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. So besides Ana Lazara Rodriguez, there are other homeowners here who are facing cases of foreclosure that have clear signs of fraud, and we're going to talk about that today. Floridians for Honest Lending, the organization for which I speak, has actually conducted research. And this is the poster boards that you see behind you are examples of foreclosures filed in Miami-Dade County, hundreds of them, that have the telltale signs of robo-signing and using forged documents, things that banks promised not to do 10 years ago when they signed a multi-billion-dollar, multi-state agreement with the federal government and every attorney general not to do that, and yet they keep doing that. This is something that cannot happen again. We cannot have another foreclosure crisis where homeowners are tossed out of their homes by the thousands and hundreds of thousands simply because we are not taking the financial institutions to be accountable, to be honest, and to deal with us with the same integrity that they demand that we deal with them. So I'm going to first introduce Ms. Ana Lazara Rodriguez. She doesn't need a lot of introduction for you guys. She is someone that was in Fidel Castro's prisons for 19 years, the longest political prisoner in Cuba, who is a female. She actually lives in this home with another former political prisoner who has Alzheimer's disease. And yet, in spite of this, and in spite of us still being in the worst of a pandemic that keeps killing hundreds of people in our state every day, they're looking to toss her out this very week. You can see the eviction notice right behind me. That's real. And that's unacceptable given that her case has had marked fraud and is still being argued in various judicial forums. I'm going to let Ms. Lazara Rodriguez, attorney Bruce Jacobs, speak as to the details of her case. We also had David Winker here, who's going to be speaking as to some of the other issues that he's seeing as an attorney defending foreclosure victims, and some of the other victims or just people not really they're being crushed by the banks. So with that, I'm going to let Ms. Ana Lazara Rodriguez speak, and then the rest. Thank you. Actually. Sí.
Si puede hacer un pequeño resumen de más o menos casi lo mismo que dijo en inglés y en español.
No hay problema. Sí, lo iba a hacer al final, pero mejor lo hago ahora. Bueno, mi nombre es Eleazar Melendez, Eleazar, Melendez, Melendez. Soy el portavoz de una organización que se llama Floridianos para la Banca Honesta. Somos una organización sin fines de lucro cuyo propósito es dar atención a los casos de fraude en este proceso de los juicios hipotecarios, que está causando que miles de personas en el estado de la Florida estén en riesgo de perder su casa de una manera fraudulenta. Eso no es aceptable. Nosotros vimos esto hace 10 años, cuando tuvimos una crisis económica, que hubieron miles y miles de, primero los juicios hipotecarios y después los desahucios, que la gente decía que los bancos le estaban haciendo trampa y nadie le hacía caso. Y después nos dimos cuenta que era verdad y había un fraude tremendo de las instituciones bancarias. Desafortunadamente, después de 10 años, no hemos aprendido casi nada. Las instituciones bancarias siguen continuando su fraude, siguen tratando de quitarle la casa a las personas con maneras deshonestas. Y lo que estamos diciendo aquí es que eso no se puede hacer, no se puede permitir y no podemos dejar que pase como hace 10 años, que esto simplemente se pone debajo de la alfombra y nadie lidia con el problema real que tenemos aquí. Ustedes están aquí por un caso en específico, el caso de la señora Ana Lazara Rodriguez. Como ustedes saben, ella fue la mujer que estuvo más tiempo en las cárceles de Fidel Castro como prisionera política, que ella ha estado peleando toda su vida por la libertad y la justicia, y ahora en su país que ella viene a este país, que tiene su sueño americano, se le deniega de nuevo esa libertad y la justicia con un banco que a través del fraude le está tratando de quitar esta casa. Ustedes ven aquí que tienen la nota de desahucio de parte del alguacil del condado. Eso es real, eso está ahí. Ella la pueden sacar esta misma semana. Y es una mujer de 82 años, vive con una persona que también ella cuida, que es una colega que estuvo también con ellas en las cárceles de Fidel Castro, que tiene Alzheimer's. Y puede que estas personas terminen en la calle esta semana en el medio de la pandemia. Eso no se puede aceptar y por eso estamos aquí para traer atención. Y que no solamente es la señora Ana Lazara Rodríguez y su colega, sino que son miles y cientos de personas en el estado de la Florida. La organización por la cual yo hablo, Floridianos para la Banca Honesta, ha buscado todos los récords en el condado. Y si ustedes miran, aquí tienen estas cartelinas que presentan diferentes casos, que enseñan lo que es el robo-signing muy famoso, que presentan que estos son casos de juicio hipotecario en el cual se han usado documentos falsos o fraudulentos. Esto le está pasando a cientos de personas y miles de personas y no se puede permitir. Ese es el mensaje aquí. Hay que traer atención, hay que cambiar la ley de una manera que no se siga permitiendo este fraude y que la misma manera que los bancos exigen que nosotros seamos honestos, que nosotros seamos íntegros, que nosotros digamos la verdad, ellos también hagan lo mismo. Con eso le voy a presentar tanto al abogado de la señora Ana Lazara, Bruce Jacobs, al licenciado David Winker, que también está lidiando con este y otros casos, y a otras personas que también enfrentan esta situación y que no han hecho nada mal, que simplemente están enfrentando el fraude de los bancos. Muchas gracias. Bruce.
Thank you all for coming. So the Constitution says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. And what we're witnessing today is systemic fraud in foreclosures. And we've seen this fraud before. The banks a decade ago promised to stop doing the exact same fraud that we see today, and worse. So for those who don't know, a decade ago, there was something called the robo-signing scandal, where banks were caught using what they called assignments of mortgages, documents they would record in the public records and present in court to take people's homes. That was the evidence they used. The FBI investigated it and said that there were millions of false and fictitious assignments recorded all over the country, that it was one of the top 10 financial crimes in the history of our nation. And what became of that crisis was a national mortgage settlement. 49 attorney generals got involved. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the federal regulators, got involved. All of them were saying the same thing: stop it. You can't use false evidence in foreclosures. Why? Because no one should be deprived of their property without due process. And a fraudulent foreclosure is not due process. So now here we are a decade later, and Ana Lazara Rodriguez was reported in the Miami Herald a couple of years ago that she had been foreclosed on. And I saw her case, and I saw the exact same robo-signed documents from a decade ago. Plus, I saw they did something else, which was criminal. The promissory notes are just like checks. If you turn over your check and you sign the back of it, that's an endorsement. And if someone were to sign your name for you and lie and say that you signed it, that would be forgery. That's a felony in Florida and around the country. And to lie under oath about it is perjury. And that's exactly what happened in Ana Lazara's case. That's what happened in Julie Nicholas's case. That's what happened in Maria Williams James's case. That's what's happened in courtrooms all over the country. Again, the Hawaiian Supreme Court has already ruled twice against Bank of America. Says this fraudulent evidence is wrongful foreclosure. And the Ninth Circuit that governs Hawaii says when lawyers and their represent companies that are committing fraud on the court, that is racketeering, that is RICO. And that is something that there's no privilege to do. So where we stand today is that we just found out yesterday, Miss Rodriguez had an eviction served on her door. The notice is right there. And this is not the first time this has happened. So back in June 2nd of 2021, there was an eviction notice put on her door, and the mayor of Miami-Dade County, Daniela Levine Cava, stepped in and said, I'm going to make sure that the court has a chance to address these issues before we let the eviction go forward. And the judge eventually granted a stay of the eviction, Judge Peter Lopez. It was the same day, June 2nd of 2021, Judge Beatrice Butchko, another Miami-Dade judge, had an evidentiary hearing in Miss Nicholas's case and issued criminal contempt proceedings against Bank of America, Bank of New York Mellon, Carrington, and their lawyer from Ackerman, saying that they were offering perjury about fraud. You would think that that would cause everyone to pause. But Bank of America didn't. Instead, they went to the 3rd District Court of Appeals here in Florida and attacked Judge Butchko. They said she was dishonest. They said that she made the whole thing up because she was basically compromised. That the foreclosure defense lawyer who represents these women has some special influence over her. And the Bank of America was able to get the 3rd District Court of Appeals to stay the criminal contempt proceedings. We're asking the 3rd District Court of Appeals to do the same thing for this eviction. Because if there is fraud going on, people should not be losing their properties to fraud. And on Monday, tomorrow, we will be filing an emergency motion to the 3rd District Court of Appeals, asking them to stop this eviction from going forward. At the same time, we have already filed on Friday the documents that are asking the 3rd District to certify this question of great public importance to the Florida Supreme Court, to let the Florida Supreme Court deal with the question. First off, Bank of America's argument is they have a privilege to commit this fraud. Bank of America is arguing that even if it's fraud, they have a privilege to do it. We've heard about white privilege. This is called litigation privilege, and only banks apparently have it. And it's shocking to think that a bank that is one of the largest banks in our country would go into a court, an appellate court, and ask for them to be granted a privilege to commit fraud that 10 years ago they were forced to pay $25 billion in sanctions for. And all of this is coming to a head. It's not just in my client Ana Lazara's case, right? Ana Lazara didn't pay her mortgage. And a lot of people stop right there. And they don't realize that there's a bigger story that's going on here. Because the city of Miami fought all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to hold Bank of America accountable under the Fair Housing Act just a couple of years ago. And they won at the Supreme Court. Because what these banks were doing back in the day was they were targeting women like Ana Lazara, women like Julie Nicholas, women like Maria Williams James, giving them mortgages. Some of them they knew were never going to be able to repay it. Who would give a 75-year-old woman on a fixed income a $500,000 loan payable over 30 years? Nobody. That's what happened for Ana Lazara's case. And they gave it to her. She was the one who said, I can't afford to pay this mortgage. They said, don't worry, we'll qualify you anyway. And they did. And that money went to help pay for medical expenses for Ana Lazara's roommate who was dying of cancer. That's where the money went to. And at the end of the day, when her roommate died and the money was gone, she ends up in foreclosure. Some people say that's her fault. I disagree. I think banks should not be allowed to do that to people. The city of Miami disagreed. The U.S. Supreme Court disagreed. Now you have Julie Nicholas, who spent years paying her mortgage. Everything was fine. Then she had a 3-month gap in her income. Company got audited. They didn't pay her for 3 months. She fell into default. Just enough. She spent time after time after time doing loan mod application after loan mod application, paying thousands and thousands of dollars in temporary payments, only to be evicted by a fraudulent foreclosure. She did everything she could to pay. She had gotten a raise. She had all the money she needed, but the banks, Bank of America, put her in foreclosure. Why? Because they make more money at the end of the day. And you're going to hear from Miss Williams-James, who to me is the most offensive story that I've seen in my 25 years of practicing law. Miss Maria Williams-James, her husband fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. He was a fighter pilot, retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. That guy, this family has paid a debt to this country and expects the Constitution to work for everybody. And Miss Williams-James paid Bank of America every month on her mortgage for years. And Bank of America put her into a foreclosure anyway. They got a judgment against her for foreclosure as they were taking her payments and cashing her checks on a $51,000 mortgage. That was a $300 a month payment. And Judge Jennifer Bailey here in Miami, who wrote the foreclosure bench book for all the judges, vacated the judgment due to fraud in 2014. Why? Because it was clear Miss Williams paid Bank of America her mortgage payment every month. It was all fraud. What Bank of America do? They kept taking her payments every month of $300, and they transferred servicing to somebody else who started another foreclosure. And just last month, a judge in Miami who had recused herself from all of the cases involving this fraud, except for Miss James's case, reinstated that fraudulent judgment. And now she faces losing her home too. So this isn't just about whether you've paid Bank of America, whether you wanted to pay Bank of America, or you haven't paid in a decade. This is about the Constitution. And what we're seeing now, what we're asking tomorrow, is for the Third District Court of Appeals to stop all this, to stay the eviction and give us an opportunity to be heard. Give us an opportunity to raise the challenge that we raised. Because Bank of America does not have a privilege to commit fraud, not under the law that I was taught all the way back going to law school. And if there is a statute that says that Miss Rodriguez can only sue for money damages now, she doesn't get her house back, well, that statute's unconstitutional because it's depriving Miss Rodriguez of her property without due process. And that's what we should all be focusing on. So we're thankful that the mayor of Miami-Dade County, Daniela Levine Cava, came out and stepped in again to allow us to make sure that we get heard. I wanted to read a statement that was issued by Florida Senator Ileana Garcia, who's been with us, helping us with this fight to hold these banks accountable for months and months now. Senator Ileana Garcia said, "A person cannot be deprived of their property without due process. A fraudulent foreclosure is not due process. Given the circumstances, it would only be just if the Florida Supreme Court thoroughly reviewed the matter in order to protect not just Ana Lazara, but all of our seniors' rights, and for there to be a stay of her eviction in the interim. Ana Lazara fell prey to a system of home lending and mortgage servicing that is based on greed, not accessibility, and not transparency. The current system of consumer protections for our seniors is not enough. Our abuelitos, seniors who have raised families and may still be caring for their grandchildren, should be enjoying the fruits of their labor and sacrifice. They should not be worrying about fighting for a roof over their heads. People should not be pressured into signing complicated documents or agreements they cannot understand. With the lifting of the foreclosure moratoriums and an uptick of seniors facing homelessness in Miami-Dade, there should be great concern. We need to work towards a system that rewards those trying to achieve homeownership rather than punish them." So I hope that when you tell the story of this case, it's not just about an old Cuban woman who fought for freedom 60 years ago and served decades in prison for doing that. I hope you tell the story about Bank of America claiming that there's a privilege to commit fraud in foreclosures. I hope you tell the story about them claiming that there's that it's constitutional to pass a statute that says Miss Rodriguez loses her home and she has to file a lawsuit for money damages. And I hope that you listen to the stories of these women. I'm going to have each one of them come up and just tell you a little bit about what this has been the experience for them that they've gone through. so that hopefully we can bring this all to a head. And we're calling on not just state leaders, but federal leaders. Senator Marco Rubio, Congresswoman Salazar, Maria Elvira Salazar. We've been asking for them to get involved for months. And so far, we have no help. And we need help. So I'd like to take a minute and just let Ana Lazara come forward and tell a little bit about what this experience has been like for her.
I thank all of you for coming over here and trying to help all of us fight against corruption. I came from a country where I fight, not for me, for the freedom of my countrymen. I have spent 19 years trying to prevail in the fight for freedom in Cuba with no avail. Miriam Ortega spent 18 years with me fighting also for freedom. And now we came to a country that has the best institution of the world. But if you don't apply the law, if you don't have institution at all. So we have to prevail in that fight, because this is not my fight. It's the fight of many millions of people that have suffered what I'm suffering now. And it's amazing that they decide to put an eviction the same date as 9/11. For me, when I opened the door and found the eviction, I was already crying, not for me. I was crying for the ones that have died innocently in 9/11. When I saw the eviction, I feel that it was so cruel to do that in this day. Exactly on this day. I can tell you that I don't come to this country to commit any fraud, that I have fight for justice my whole life, so I don't came to this country to commit fraud. It's the bank that is the one that is committing fraud. And we have to fight, not for me, for all of those that have been in eviction or are going to be evicted because the fraud in the bank. Thank you very much. And God bless all of you. And God bless America.
Señora Lazara, en español, por favor. En español lo puede hacer.
Sí. Yo luché en Cuba por la libertad de todos los cubanos. Yo no era política, ni yo era sencillamente una estudiante de medicina. No estaba involucrada en política, ni en el gobierno, ni en nada que tuviera que ver con fraude. Yo sencillamente luché para que todos los cubanos fueran libres. Yo luché porque había una tiranía en mi país. Es triste que venga de un país como Cuba, donde cuando protestaba por huelgas de hambre, se me negaba el agua. Y en un momento determinado tuve alucinaciones, porque llevaba 3 días sin poder tomar agua, porque me la quitaron. Es triste venir de un país donde tú estás luchando por la libertad de todos, llegar a un país de libertades y que se le niegue a uno la libertad. Botarme de mi casa significa un revés tan enorme, porque yo estoy cargando conmigo una persona que ya no se puede cuidar a sí misma. Yo espero que todos ustedes nos ayuden a lograr la justicia, que es lo más importante en un país, que la justicia no se pierda, que los bancos no puedan cometer fraude contra los ciudadanos. Muchas gracias, que Dios les bendiga y que Dios bendiga América.
Okay, the next person I'd like to have speak is my co-counsel in this case, David Winker, who's been helping me in this fight for quite some time now. I think that there's it's always good to have another lawyer who's got his own perspective, has his own clients, have their own firm that deal with these issues, and I'd like for him to share some of his thoughts about what we're seeing today.
Hi, I'm David Winker. I have in front of me here the notice of eviction that was filed yesterday, and you heard Miss Rodriguez speak. We're all capitalists here. This is a freedom fighter. She's not looking for a handout, and what banks are doing in our community, displacing people. This is a final notice of eviction and a writ of possession that's based on a fraudulent foreclosure. And what she's looking for is a chance to prove that. That's what we're looking for in court. And I think that I would encourage everyone to look at it from the perspective of what makes our society better? What makes our community better? Do we want people being displaced with fraudulent foreclosures? I think most of us would agree we don't want it. And we need change to allow that to happen. If someone doesn't pay their mortgage, if someone breaches an agreement, the law has a remedy. That's not what's occurred here. I want to be very clear. This is a fraudulent foreclosure. And the stories that you're going to hear now, and I'm going to shut up and turn it over to the actual victims here, but I want to turn it over and talk about what has happened to them. It's messy to dig into these cases, but it's necessary because the facts are shocking. And it's shocking that our financial institution is built on this level. I've often said that if I walk into court with some of the documents that I see bank counsel walk into, I would be sanctioned. A judge would not, if it was a dispute over a restaurant, and I showed up with a fraudulent note or a fraudulent endorsement, that's a serious matter, and it's taken seriously by the courts. We need the courts to take this seriously, and we need them to look closely and give people a chance to defend their homes. With that, I'll turn it over.
But Ms. Nicholas, please tell us a little bit about your experience.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone listening. I'm here to just share my story. I was paying my mortgage on a regular basis, and then the checks kept coming back to me. And the foreclosure kind of happened because I was working. I work for an agency. I'm a nurse. And they got audited for about 3 months, and we didn't receive pay. So I was lapsed. And by the time I caught up with my payments with overpay, the bank refused to listen to anything I said. So they wanted to just go ahead and, we'll do a modification. And in the middle of the modification, without me getting any solution from it, they would just turn it over to another mortgage. And it went on for a few years because they just kept changing it from one mortgage to another mortgage company and each company I went to, they would not receive any more money from me. They did not want me to make any payment. They said, we have to do a modification. And we would do modification after modification. And the thing with the modification, every time I did a modification and I make sure all the packet was completed, it was always the question, we didn't receive this piece of paper. But they weren't the one calling me, telling me that the package wasn't complete. They would just let it, don't call me or don't do anything. I don't get anything in the paper or in the mail, or receive any email. And then when I call again, they say, we're sorry, the modification didn't go through. You can go ahead and download another modification form packet either online or we'll send you another one, and you can start another modification. And I find it kind of kept going and over and over and over. And I was just searching different lawyers, different people to help me, because I said, I don't understand why the bank refused for me to pay and causing me to be in deeper debt towards them. And that I was so confused, but I kept fighting and kept fighting. I think the day it was for sale, I met Attorney Bruce through another friend, colleague, and he was like, we were gonna fight for this because I have similar story. Well, my story is not only for me. I know my story is to help other people. I am a Haitian American woman. I've been in this country for quite a long time, over 40 years. I've raised my children here. I've gone to school here. I've done to college. I'm working on my doctorate here. And I am a nurse. I do home health nurse. I work at Jackson back in the days. And for me to see me losing my home because the bank is refusing to accept my payment, I think that is so unfair, because they tell you, your dream is to get your home and live a happy life, and I'm doing that. I went to school, raised my kids, and right in the middle of all of that, the bank just want to take my home from me. There were several times, even the attorney got on the phone with me and them to do a three-way and asked, can we just make payments? I'll make 2-3 payments at one time. Oh no, we cannot make payments. We need to do a modification. And this is what's been going on a cycle for years. So I'm here today, and I want to share this story so it can help others going through the same thing, especially my people in the Haitian community. Can I say in Creole?
Yeah, please.
Moi son femme haïtienne, moi gen kay moi, et puis m'ta paye kay moi avec Bank of America, et puis yo rete comme ça, yo fait me retourner tout paiement me fait yo. Yo imposé me faire paiement, et puis yo la cause m'aller dans foreclosure. Dans foreclosure m'aller hein, et tam dans foreclosure yo dit me modifier kay lan. So chaque fois me fait modifier kay lan, et tam dans mi-temps modification nan pour yo capable bon mon résultat pour me commencer retourner paiement, yo retourner, yo prend li, yo transférer le ba on l'autre mortgage. Ça veut dire yo refusé li et puis yo passer le ba on l'autre monde, et tant yo passer le ba on l'autre monde nan, cycle la retourner encore. Moun nan yo ba li yo retourner dit comme ça, OK, faut yo font loan modification. Non loan modification nan, et yo refuso, yo pas vle payer. Même si vous avez un avocat dans le téléphone, vous dit non, vous ne pouvez pas quitter, just continuer à faire modification. Modification, ça veut dire passer 4-5 mortgage compagnies, vous n'avez pas jamais bon résultat. So, moi, je viens rencontrer avec Attorney Bruce, qu'on y a une bataille, et dans la bataille, dans le process là, et puis, attorney, avocat, juge qui n'ont scène pour nous à bataille là, juge l'a dit, Bank of America c'est fraud y a fait sur monde. So the problem is, it was in the middle of my in the case, when I was listening to the case while my attorney was here, that Bank of America, with all the information they presented in the case, Judge Butko realized they were fraud, and that's when they got charged. So now they're trying to turn it around and says that the judge is on his case, is like on his side. No, you presented those information were fraud. Those information that you presented those information. It wasn't information that my attorney Bruce presented. You yourself presented these information. You called your witness to talk to in the case, and the judge found you were lying, and you got, it was fraud on people like us who's trying to make our mortgage payment, who have a home, because it's so frustrating for you to come home, like the lady here, for you to see an eviction notice without giving you a chance to just talk about it. Or I know there's so many people losing their home, but if you have the money to make the payment, why would a bank not want to accept your payment and want you to go deeper into debt? That is something that didn't sit well with me, and this is the reason why when I reached out to Bruce, Attorney Bruce, he told me we can fight because he has a lot of other people going through the same thing. Thank you for hearing our story. We hope we are helping a lot of other people going through this. And I pray that Bank of America, whatever fraud they're doing, that we get our justice through that. Thank you so much. My name is Julie Nicholas, Julie Nicolas.
Thank you, Ms. Nicholas. I just want to point out that the experience Ms. Nicholas went through with Bank of America's loan boarding process, a federal judge in California named Christopher Klein, in a case called Sundquist, Sundquist, called Kafkaesque. And he hit them with a $45 million punitive damage judgment for putting people through exactly what Ms. Nicholas went through. And we have to be able to hold these banks accountable. Bank of America is twice as big as they were in 2008 when they crashed the economy. Now they have $3 trillion. We've witnessed the largest transfer of wealth from everyone to these shareholders of Bank of America. Why do we allow that to happen in our country when we have a constitution? And if it's because the Bank of America has been able to infiltrate the country, the government, and take over all of the regulators, take over all of the legislatures, take all over the executive, the judiciary, if we're at that place, that's a really sad state of affairs that I hope people who swore the oath to the Constitution stand up and defend, regardless of what it cost you. Because there are people here who it's cost a lot. Now, the last person I wanted to hear from is Maria Williams James. And she paid her mortgage to Bank of America 4 years. And she still now has a judgment that says she hasn't paid Bank of America since January of 2010. A judgment that another judge had already vacated due to fraud because Miss Williams James paid her mortgage to Bank of America. It was all fraud. And we have the same fraud that Miss Rodriguez has with this fake evidence. We have the same thing for Miss Nicholas that Judge Butchko is trying to hold them accountable for in Miss Williams James's case. And the judge in that case, rather than rule in our favor because there was fraud, reinstated a judgment that she knew was fraudulent after she recused herself from all of our cases that deal with these fraud issues. That's something that I've never seen in 25 years of practice, and it's something that should not be tolerated in this country. So, Ms. Williams James, please tell us a little bit about your experience.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Williams James, and I'm sorry to both of you. But I thought I was doing a good thing. I paid my mortgage each and every month. I wasn't even late. Bank of America put me in foreclosure, but I proved that I paid my mortgage. I thought everything was fine. Not so. I continued to pay my mortgage, but Bank of America decided we're not going to give her any accountability for this money. We just change it to another server, which they did. Well, I fought. I wrote a written request saying, no, I will need accountability for my money. That did not help me. The new server then, because I refused to deal with them, put me in another foreclosure. I never dealt with any of those people, had very dramatic experiences with them, but I refused to deal with them in spite of the threats and whatever. Anyway, I continued to pay. Bank of America continued to lie about it, to say that I didn't pay. I eventually proved that I did. But guess what? They went back to the first foreclosure and decided, oh, we'll bring this one back in and we'll just do a final judgment on that. And what's so hurtful to me about it is that if I paid then, I can still prove that I paid to this day. I can still prove that I paid my mortgage. But the judge won't give me a chance. Matter of fact, she wouldn't even let me speak in her court. So I had to write a letter, which I did. But this has been very difficult. And I'm sure it's been very difficult for you ladies. But it's not about not paying your mortgage. It's not about that. Because I paid mine, and I thought I was a pretty good citizen. I worked 37 years in Dade County Public Schools. I figured I was doing okay. I never missed any payments. But that's not important to the banks. When they decide that they want something, I guess they get it. I guess my house was more profitable because the mortgage was only $51,700. I've spent $30,000 just on legal fees. But of course, that doesn't matter either. The banks have a very powerful position in our courts. And I really think as a country and as a government, someone has to step in and say, hold on, you've been here. You gotta wait. You just can't continue to commit fraud and take people's homes, especially my people. A lot of them are not educated, but I have a little bit of education. I decided I'm gonna fight. But a lot of stories I hear, you just cry and you pray, because my people are known for paying their bills, but they get tired and they don't have much fight because nobody's listening anyway. But the press, if you want to say something, get the local leaders, the federal leaders, all those people in charge. Start doing some investigation on the courts, on the judges that are allowing the banks to lie. And it's okay. And the poor consumers looking back and saying, hold it. What about, I paid. They don't want to hear that. You don't have any power because we're just plain old consumers. But we did help make this country. Thank you all for listening. And I really hope this makes a difference for, especially, yeah. And I drove these miles, not just for myself, but for her. When I met her, I hugged her and I cried. I said, if you ever need me, I'll be there. I don't know what I could do. What can I say? I have much money. I wish I did. Because if I did, she'd be the first to stay in her home. People's crazy. But anyway, thanks for listening.
Spell your name for us also, please.
My name is Maria Williams James. MARIA WILLIAMS. James, JAMES. My husband was a retired military lieutenant colonel from the Air Force. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. I think with that case and the other ones that you heard about this afternoon, it really shows us something about where we are in this country and where financial institutions are versus the people and the homeowners. Where if a homeowner lies in court, they go to prison. If a bank lies in court, they say we have a right to lie. If a homeowner fails in their responsibility, even once, they face a nightmare that never ends, no matter how much they try to make it right. When the banks don't try to make it right, they get away with it. And ultimately, we have a legal system in a country where it's far more shameful and dangerous for a homeowner to owe money than for a bank to steal it. And that's not right. I'm going to take questions in Spanish. Voy a coger preguntas en español. Si alguno de los medios en español tienen alguna pregunta sobre lo que se ha discutido en el día de hoy.
Nosotros solamente quisiéramos entrevistar un momentico a la señora.
A la señora Ana Lazara. Ok, ¿alguien más tiene alguna pregunta en español sobre lo que discutimos en el día de hoy? No, bueno, pues entonces la señora Ana Lazara rápido.
Sí, se puede quedar ahí para hacerle unas preguntas.
Sí.
Lázaro, si nos puede contar lo que sintió, que lo había dicho en inglés cuando abrió la puerta y descubrió lo que habían colocado ahí, ¿no? La sensación en ese momento.
Mira, yo estaba viendo la televisión, estaba viendo reproduciéndose los sucesos del 9/11 y estaba llorando porque murieron mucha gente inocente, mucha gente que no tenía nada que ver ni con política, ni con nada, ni con ninguna doctrina. Fue un asesinato tan espantoso que yo estaba llorando a pesar de que ha pasado tanto tiempo, a pesar de los 20 años. Y decidí que iba a descansar un poco de la televisión porque me estaba haciendo daño. Abrí la puerta y vi el eviction en la puerta y consideré que era una crueldad enorme decidir específicamente ese día para ponerme el eviction. Era de una crueldad que yo no me la podía imaginar en este país de leyes. No entendí, no pude entender cómo era posible que escogieran específicamente ese día. Me pareció demasiado fuerte.
Ha sido una batalla larga, ¿verdad?
Yo lo único que quiero que sepan es que toda mi vida lo que he sido es una luchadora por la libertad. No la libertad de mi país, sino la libertad de cualquier país. Yo creo que es hora de que todos luchemos por la libertad. Yo creo que nos olvidamos, por ejemplo, de lo que ocurrió en Tiananmen Square. La gente pasó la página y creyó que eso era una cuestión china, nada más, y que no tenía importancia. Cuando el mundo pasó la página de Tiananmen Square, nos estábamos condenando a nosotros mismos a vivir sin libertad.
Si puede repetir en inglés, por favor.
Okay. I have been fighting all my life for freedom, and I think that it was a very cruel way to put an eviction the same day that the towers in New York were destroyed. I think that it was a cruelty that I didn't hope to come from this country of law. But then I remember that when Tiananmen Square occurred, people decided to turn the page and forgot that it was like a Chinese problem, not our problem. But Tiananmen Square was our problem. After Tiananmen Square, we have destroyed the Communist Party in China. But we turned the page and continue doing business as nothing has happened. But when we turn the page from freedom, we are getting rid of our own freedom. So all of us have to fight for freedom, because freedom is a right that all human beings have. It's a human right. Thank you, and God bless you.
Ana Lázara, ¿qué siente usted cuando cierra la puerta de su casa, se queda ahí sola, teniendo en cuenta que los días pudieran estar contados, que pudieran venir a sacarla de su casa? ¿Siente miedo? ¿Cómo describe estos días, no?
Nada más que te queda Dios. Nada más que te queda el creer que de una forma u otra Dios va a encontrar una solución. Porque no tienes más nada. Cuando las leyes empiezan a abandonarte, cuando los jueces pasan la página, te asusta. Te asusta realmente.
Gracias.
Any more questions? God bless you.
So, the only way that Ana Lazara Rodriguez could have only a night left in this house is if the Third District Court of Appeals tomorrow says that it's constitutional to deprive her of her property without due process. It's that simple. And we're going to ask the Third District Court of Appeals not even to make that decision, to let the Florida Supreme Court decide that. Just keep things as they are today, where everyone from Bank of America who should be prosecuted for committing this systemic fraud in the court, they got to stay pending appeal. Give Ana Lazara the same stay pending appeal so we can get to a reasoned opportunity for the courts to make a true judgment based on the laws of this country. And just to be clear, there is a lawyer by the name of Chuck Caliogiannis. He is right now serving 9 years in prison. He was a foreclosure defense lawyer from Pasco County. He got caught on video in the clerk's office forging endorsements in Bank of America foreclosures. And they came after him like a ton of bricks. They put him in prison for 9 years. And no one has a privilege to commit fraud. That's the contract we signed when we entered into the Constitution. Remember that it was Alexander Hamilton and the Federalists, who we hear all this about the Federalist Society. They were the bankers who wanted to have a strong central government, a strong bank. And it was guys like John Hancock and Thomas Jefferson who said, no, not unless you sign the Bill of Rights, which has the Fifth Amendment that says no person should be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. And how do we know John Hancock? Because of his signature. That's how important all of this comes down to. It's about integrity, it's about honesty, it's about truth, law, justice, and the American way. And we'll find out tomorrow, God willing, the Third District Court of Appeals will do what they should do and stop this eviction so we can then have this issue dealt with by the people who should deal with it. And just to make the final point, whatever happens tomorrow, in Hawaii, the law is very clear. This is criminal behavior. So I am going to Hawaii. I have been, the county of Maui passed a unanimous resolution just a couple of weeks ago asking for their people to work with my people so we can hold Bank of America accountable. We will be filing a civil class action RICO lawsuit in the very near future to address all of this. So whether Florida says it's constitutional to deprive people of their property without due process isn't really going to be the end of the debate anyway. So we just hope that our elected leaders, that our judges who swore the oath, remember, they work for the people of the United States of America, not the Bank of America. They work for the people of Florida. And they have an obligation to make sure that their one job is to protect constitutional rights. And if they won't do that, they shouldn't be there. So I hope that they do their job and that we have a good story to follow up with tomorrow, because Ms. Rodriguez deserves to be treated like any American with due process. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you very much for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We're done.
All right, we're done.